Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our series Starstruck. I'm your host today, Alok Deep Singh. I head digital for wealth and personal banking at HSBC India. Our guest for today is an actor. He's a director, a screenwriter, and he's also a rugby player. His movie career scans almost 3 decades, and he's acted in movies of many languages. He's somebody who leaves an indelible mark on your mind every time he comes on the screen with some of the most influential and memorable movies. If I can give you a clue of Jhankar Beats, Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, 15 Park Avenue, Dil Dhadakne Do, and it's a long list of movies. He has come to be known as the superstar of Indian art house cinema by the Time magazine. Please welcome Rahul Bose. Uh, Rahul, thanks for joining us.
Alok, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Rahul, before we get on to the questions, I would like to remind our viewers that we have a question tab which is below the screen. So please keep your questions flowing. Once we have a few questions from you, I will ask Rahul on your behalf. We also have a chat window, viewers, so you can shower your love for Rahul and HSBC. Once again, Rahul, it's a pleasure to have you amongst us. It's been such an interesting journey. I think I haven't seen somebody with such a multifaceted experience, an actor and a sportsman, both par excellence. Tell us in terms of how did it really start? Did did acting first come or happen to you, or was it the sports bug? I know you've been into boxing, you've been into rugby, both of them at a very high level of both the games.
Well, Alok, in school, the kid I was is still very much the man I am today. My interest in school from the age of 4, 5, 6 was sports obsessed, sports crazy. I had to be dragged home in the evenings. I was always playing something, and my interest in theater and debates and drama and extempore and all of elocution, all of that, uh, they were like twin trains uh, traveling at the same speed all through my school career. So if I started playing sport like any kid starts at the age of 4 and 5, I started drama at the age of 6. I was in standard 2 when I was chosen to play the lead role in Tom the Piper's Son in my school, Cathedral School, uh, the infant school, which is in Malabar Hill. And when I came onto stage, three things hit me immediately. One was I loved what I was doing. Two was it was easy, unlike chemistry. And three was people loved what I was doing. I mean, it's okay if you love to sing. My mother loved to sing, but she couldn't hold a tune. So we used to wince and cringe every time she began to sing, but she loved it, but nobody else did. So it's a big difference when people love what you're doing also. So the maths teacher who used to throw me out of class uh, was in tears in the front row, and she gave me a choco bar, those vanilla with the chocolate coating on top. She
Yes,
gave me a choco
yes.
bar after the play. So I was like, this is fantastic. I feel great. I'm enjoying myself, and people are enjoying me enjoying myself. Uh, Similarly, with sport, I love to play. I was fiercely competitive, and I played everything. So I came out of Cathedral School in Standard 12 with school colors in 11 sports. And I was
Wow.
boxing captain, I was elocution captain, I was the best actor. I was at that time I was the most decorated boy in Cathedral School history for academics, for cultural activities, and for sport. So it's pretty much that that I have. That's the greatest gift I've given myself is I have managed to stay true to every part of my heart that was passionate about things when I was a kid to today, barring the social activism and my two NGOs, which of course, who could predict at the age of 6 whether you'll ever develop
Yeah.
a heart and compassion like that. But the other two parts of my life, sport and theater and drama, those have run strongly parallel through school, through college and Sydenham College. After that, on the Bombay professional stage, um, and then rugby was going strong. So, long answer to your short question. Uh, that's where it started from, and it hasn't yet ended.
Wow. I think we've seen a lot of movie stars do biopics of sportsmen or sportswomen, if I may say. But I think we haven't seen somebody who's actually been both of them. And rugby and boxing, while you mentioned about your achievements at school, so many colors and so many games. Rugby is such a high contact sport. It requires such a high level of physical fitness and strength. How did rugby happen? I mean, of all the sports in India, because more often kids in India would pick up a cricket bat or a football in the ground, or maybe a basketball. So, how did rugby of all the games?
Well, I was very fortunate. My school, as I said, Cathedral School, had rugby on its roster. And at the time, there were only two schools in India that had rugby on their roster, Cathedral School and La Martiniere in Calcutta. So we, it was a given that everybody had to play uh, just at a rudimentary level. And then if you got chosen to play for your house, great. If you got chosen to play for school, even better. And I was a very serious cricketer up to that point. I'm talking about the age of 14 when I
Yeah,
learned rugby. And I was a very promising cricketer. I played Giles Shield for school. I top scored. I opened the bowling. I was in the papers, all of that stuff. But I used to open the bowling for school, and I stopped. I realized I was not going to become very tall, as the world has seen by now. Um,
yeah,
and I knew that if I didn't cross, I didn't look like I was going to cross 5'6", which I haven't.
yeah,
Then
yeah,
a future as a bowler is very, very unlikely, especially if you're bowling pace.
yeah,
So at that time, as my ambitions to, I'm not saying I was ambitious to become a cricketer of international renown. I didn't have that much talent, but talent enough to play schools and college and maybe some, serious club cricket and stuff. So when rugby came along, that cricket horizon was fading. And here was a sport that you're 14, you have energy coming out of your pores, you have aggression coming out of your pores, you have rebelliousness coming out of your pores. And this is a sport that encourages you to get dirty, to fall and get mucky. Wow. This is a sport that encourages you to be as aggressive as you want to on the field, and you don't have to be a gentleman. Double wow. And this was a sport that girls love to watch. And I was in a co-educational school, and girls who wouldn't
yeah,
look at me when
yeah.
I was in class uh, would suddenly come and say hi to me after watching me play rugby. So it was three great reasons, and all the wrong reasons, why I should have taken up that sport. And so I did. And it's only when I was 16 that I was scouted by the Bombay Gymkhana uh, scouts, because we were playing on the Bombay Gymkhana ground. And by the time I was 17, I was playing for the Bombay Gymkhana. And at 18, I played my first All India tournament and scored the highest number of goals, if you call it that, but it was
Yeah.
tries. And so I was the highest try scorer of the tournament in the All India tournament when I was 18. And that's when the whole thing started. So that's how rugby really started, from school.
Oh, no, that's interesting. I think you mentioned about cricket, and you've played the role of the Indian captain in one of your movies. It's a kids movie, but I'm sure as adults, a lot of us loved it. And your spirit of being a sportsman really comes out in that movie. Tell us, how did movies? You spoke about theater. You went into theater. How did movies happen? Because a lot of people do theater in college, but then movies is a natural progression, not the easiest one. How did movies happen from there?
Well, First of all, I don't think movies are a natural progression, Alok. In today's highly competitive world, you can be a very good theater actor and never get a movie to do. You could get lots of television, and today's world, you could get lots of OTT stuff to do. But I don't know whether you'd get, you know, bade parde pe. I don't know whether you'd get movies to do. That was never my intention. My intention was always to be a theater actor. I was in advertising, working in advertising. Very, very happy to work from 10 to 6, rehearse from 7 to 9 every night, and then do put up plays over the weekend. And I worked with all the big theater groups in the city. But when I was doing one of my plays, I was acting in a play that was directed by Rahul Bose, an English play called Are There Tigers in the Congo? And I was acting, it was a two-hander, just two of us in the play. And the other actor also went on to become a very, very um, acclaimed film actor, Rajit Kapoor, not Rajat
Yeah.
Kapoor, but Rajit
Yes.
Kapoor, who worked with Mr. Sham Benegal over many, many films. So Raju and I were doing this play called Are There Tigers in the Congo? And Rahul Dakuna's aunt, Uma Dakunia, was the casting director for the first major English language film ever to be made in India, which was English August.
English August.
And
Yes.
there had been an English film made before that by Pradeep Kishan, in which Annie gives it those ones, but it was still very much a cult, off the beaten track kind of release. Whereas this one, 20th Century Fox was releasing, and so she came up to me and said, "I loved your performance. I wonder whether you'd like to be part of this film." And I said, "Sure." And then Dave Benegal, the director of the film, he auditioned me. It took about 8 or 9 months, and I got that film based on me acting on theater. And so while I did English August and after, I continued my theater career. But from 1995, when English August released, to 2000, when I stopped doing theater, for those 6 years, I did theater and film simultaneously, and I played rugby. And in 1998, we were recognized as an international rugby playing nation. So I was playing rugby for India simultaneously,
Yep.
and through all of that madness, it was an embarrassment of riches for me. I was so happy, but that's how cinema happened, and one film gave way to the other. So it's fashionable to say that one has attained success after a struggle, but I never had to struggle. What I struggled at were my roles. What I shed my blood at was being good at what I did. What I spent sleepless nights tossing and turning in bed about was, have I done enough? Can I get better? But actually making the transition and becoming a full-time actor in films was no struggle for me at all. It was luck and chance and of course talent and being at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. So I think movies is a lot about choices, and I think you've had such a diverse list of movies from Jhankar to Chameli, English August, Split Wide Open. There has been a mix of so many different languages, uh, what people classify as mainstream or parallel cinema. So, were your movies conscious choices? How did how did they happen in terms of how did you choose to work for some of these movies? Maybe you could share some of your experiences.
Sure. Because money was never a prime moving factor in my life, I've never had to starve or work hard to get a meal and put it in my stomach. I could afford to be extremely choosy with the work I wanted to do. I often say that a career is not defined by what you say yes to. A career is defined by what you say no to. And so I had the luxury of saying no, and I continue to say no 9 out of 10 times. I've only done 37 or 38 films in a career spanning 27 years. So,
That's right.
yes, all my choices were conscious. Nobody drugged me and forced me to do things or tied me up and hung me upside down and beat me on the soles of my
Yeah.
feet. Nobody kidnapped my loved ones and threatened to kill them if I didn't do a role. So none of that happened. It was all very, very conscious. It was all very, very calculated, but never calculated with the box office in mind. Never calculated to become more and more famous. Otherwise, then I would have gone on to do another kind of cinema. It was
Yeah.
always calculated to what gave me the most happiness. What is it that I would really like to look back on and say, yes, I'm happy, I'm proud of that film. And today, barring 2 instances out of 38, I can honestly say that I have been extremely, I'm extremely uh, calm and happy about the work I've done, whether it's the 9 films in Bengali, or the 6 films in English, or the 15, 20 odd films in Hindi, or the film in Kannada, or Vishwarupam, which was in Tamil and Hindi, Vishwarupam 1 and 2. All these films fill me with a great deal of happiness. None of them were, what should I say, choices made out of, uh, you know, out of adversity, out of wanting income, or sometimes you make choices because you're
Yeah.
desperate for a particular kind of fame or recognition. I've never had that ghost shadowing me. I've never had that monkey on my back. So my choices have been pretty pure, and they've always come from the heart. As I said, barring one or two, I'm very, very happy with the way they turned out.
No, no, and that shows in the love that the audience has for your movies or performances. I can see we have questions starting to come in from the audience. There's a question from Kashmira Marfatia. She's saying, "I loved Purna. How did that film come about?"
Purna must be one of the most enriching experiences of my life. And having come 20 years after the my debut directorial venture, which was Everybody Said I'm Fine, not 20 years, I'm exaggerating, 17 years, it was time for me to do something. And I was presented a script by the writers of the script, and they wanted to direct it, and I was going to produce it because I thought it was a fantastic subject. And over time, over a year, as things transpired, uh, the mantle of direction fell on me, and as I said, I believed in the project as a producer. For me to believe in it as a director was very, very simple. I never knew of this story. I still am ashamed to admit that somebody who is so sports mad, who knows, yeah, who follows chess, and Magnus Carlsen being one of the most charismatic, most talented chess players ever to have walked on the surface of this earth, and Vishy doing what he did and changing the whole game for the sport, both in the world and in India. So from there to golf, I mean, how did I not know that the youngest girl to ever climb Mount Everest was an Indian, and that too an Adivasi, and that too from Telangana, which is as flat as the palm of my hand. And till today, it remains my greatest cinematic reward. I I look at the film even now, and barring a couple of things, I'm so I feel so fulfilled and so मतलब सब सही था वहां पे, there's a
Right.
the beats were, I'm very proud of that film. I mean, it's not an artistic showpiece, it's not a art house masterpiece, it doesn't dazzle you with its camera work or its art direction or its great studied performances, but as a whole, I think there's so much of truth and integrity in that piece. I'm very proud of it.
So that brings me to a question on which you mentioned about the options, and when I spoke about the uh, progression to cinema, we've seen the advent of the OTT platforms, and even more in the last 6 or 7 months, while the pandemic has been around and cinema halls have been kind of shut to people. I think the world of OTTs has really opened up a lot of endless possibilities of content to actors. How different is that world versus the cinema that we're used to going and viewing at cinema halls? We've seen you in Bulbul, which was on Netflix very recently. Must have been a very challenging role. How's your experience been, or what do you think is the OTT opportunity for actors?
Well, I think this is the second wave of unleashing talent across the industry. I think the first wave outside of cinema was television. It was a great thing. You had theater actors who could not get work in cinemas rushing into television and making a living and making a life and not having to work in some bank or something like that. Sorry, I know I'm speaking to everybody at HSBC.
No, no, it's okay.
I'm keenly aware, but for an actor to work at a bank, you can imagine, just like for a banker to get onto stage, so you can imagine
Yeah,
the difficulty. So the second wave is OTT. Alok, it is amazing how much of opportunity it has unleashed across the entire industry. At a time when cinema was becoming so expensive, Alok, to actually make. Purna cost 7 crores. The publicity budget of that film was between 3.5 and 4 crores. At 11 crores, I'm talking to you as a producer now, the film had to make a 25 crore box office to break even, and that's after taxes. So it's 25 crore net box office to break even at an 11 crore spend. So it's a I mean, I would not cast Rahul Bose in a film that had to get 25 crores at the box office. So
Yeah.
all of us were cut out of cinema. Cinema was steadily being reduced to 25 of the most charismatic, of the most popular film actors and talented. I hold nothing against them, but it was a question of who can get the crowds in and what kind of subject can get the crowds in. And if you want to do an off the beaten track subject, you can't use a Rahul Bose. You will have to use a famous actor, somebody much more famous than I am. So OTT has come at a time when actors like me had more or less thought to ourselves, you know, barring a Bengali film here or one or two art house Hindi movies that might be made,
Yeah.
if somebody is foolhardy enough to try a Purna, I might get work there. Otherwise, I really don't think I'm going to get much work. But the OTT platform has completely changed that entire game. And today, all the wonderful, wonderful, talented actors that you stopped seeing on screen are back on OTT. And all the new talent that you never would have seen on screen are on OTT right now. So there is there's a renaissance, and it's amazing. Coming to Bulbul, I think that I do believe that would have been part of your question. How was it doing Bulbul, Alok, or am I preempting you, or was it not? Was it not a question?
Well, I'll be candid. It is a question. It was a question. Yes, I couldn't help ask it because I think I saw it last evening, and I was quite in terms of impressed. And it's quite different, even if you look at within the different OTT genres. It's a very different kind of a movie. Will take a lot of effort, and I know you prepare a lot for your roles. So
Yeah, Bulbul was very difficult. Uh, to play these two characters, especially the twin brother who has mental challenges, was also very challenging because when you play a character like that, if you go slightly over the top, the audience will slaughter you. कि देखो ये तो ऐसा ऐसा कर रहा है kind of thing. So it
correct.
had to be very finely calibrated. I owe a lot to my director Anvita Dutt, who directed me with great subtlety, who encouraged me to put in a subtle performance, and also used me in the edit very well. Um, a lot of credit goes to Anvita. But even playing the other brother, the Zamindar, Indranil, wasn't easy because he goes to a very dark place in his soul, and to savagely assault and beat your wife out of a sense of entitlement, out of a sense of jealousy that comes from nothing but insecurity and patriarchy and the insufferable chokehold that men still have over so many parts of societies in the world today. That kind of character to play took me to very dark spaces. And when you decide to play a character, you have to submit in entirety. You can't try and make the character be good or be heroic when you are smashing the feet of your wife with a poker in your hand 100 times. So you can't. You have to go with that. And that brings me to a point that I really would like to make today, which is that everything that very good actors do, they bring their intelligence to. And I'm not trying to congratulate myself. I actually mean this as a general comment. Actors who bring their intelligence, which they don't show, but they're bringing the bed of that intelligence to the role that they're performing. Whether it's Amir Khan, whether it's Tabu or Konkona or Irfan, or so many wonderful actors, or Robert Downey Jr. or Marlon Brando or Daniel Day-Lewis. While they are playing that character, you're lost in that character. But there is an intelligence that they're bringing as to why they are doing the piece, why that character, what part in a movie, in its message, is that character playing. And that the unintelligent actors will give you a great role, but they will not leave you with something. something indefinable to think about and hold on to later on. Whereas the intelligent actors actually leave you with the larger purpose of that film. You cannot just walk away from Mr. and Mrs. Iyer saying that, oh, it's a Muslim man met a Hindu girl, and she was from a very conservative family, and they couldn't be together, and how sad it was a love story. But the larger canvas of that is what people what the film has successfully managed for people to carry with them away. That what is this world that we live in? Kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
think whether it is Chain Kuli Ki Main Kuli, whether it is Shaurya, whether it is Pyar Ke Side Effects, there is a bed. There is a reason why it's been written, even though it might be a flimsy reason. But there is a reason why it's been written, why it's being directed that way, why the director chose to spend 1.5 years of her life making that film, even with Bulbul, which slams patriarchy. And I think that it's so important it's such a gift when you have a talented actor, and by actor, I mean actor or actress, you know, doing such a convincing job, and yet bringing to you the gravitas, even though it's a comedy. Jaane Bhi To Yaro would not be Jaane Bhi To Yaro if they didn't have such
Yeah.
intelligent, superhumanly talented actors working. But the intelligence also matters because you come out of it, not dismissing it 2 hours later. You come out of it and it stays with you 20 years later. And that is the difference.
Interesting. So there's a question from the audience on when is Rahul going to direct his Hindi movie? I presume you've already have, or are you going to direct a Hindi movie?
And Purna was a Hindi movie.
That's what I thought. I mean, which is where I was surprised on the question. So going forward, in terms of we from here we move on to a section which we call as down the memory lane. We'll probably want to show you some photographs that we found of you.
Okay.
Can we have the photographs, please?
I'm dreading this. Oh, okay. I'm not dreading this. Right.
We have some more coming up. Yeah, yeah.
That
So you want to
is,
tell us about this?
yes, of course. One of the proudest moments of the release of Purna when, uh, may his soul rest in peace, the Rashtrapati, the Honorable President of India, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, organized a private screening at Rashtrapati Bhavan for a lot of children who came for that screening. And of course, President himself was there, as was his family. And they watched Purna. And here he is after the film shaking hands with the real Purna. This is the Purna Malawat who actually climbed Mount Everest. And next to her is Aditi Inamdar, who played Purna in the film. And and of course, there is me trying to look respectable in a in a band gala. But yeah, that's us after the screening. And he turned to me in Bengali. He said, "Khub bhalo chhobi baniyecho," which means that you've made a wonderful film. So
Yes, yes.
it was a beautiful day in our lives, and I will forever remember the generosity and the grace and the time and the care with which he watched the film, because I was sitting next to him while he was watching. I was watching him watching the film, and it was a wonderful. And both Purna and Aditi, and of course Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar was also there, who I play in the film, who was Purna's mentor, and we had a very memorable time.
Okay. Can we have the next picture, please?
Yes, that is me running the marathon in the Andamans. It's not a marathon. I was running the 11K. They have a half marathon, which I didn't run. I ran the 11K. I think this is from 2019 because 2020 probably, before the pandemic in February. And it's very, very scenic. The Andamans is where I've been working since the tsunami broke in 2004, Boxing Day. So, and 6 of our children from the foundation were selected from there, and 4 of those kids are now 25 years old, and it's a long story. But my roots with the Andamans go very deep, and go back a long time. I love the islands. I always say that they are my second home. I've been there about maybe 65 times. Uh, I've never been there for tourism. I've only been once scuba diving, but the remaining 64 times has always been to do, social work or work for people. And yeah, so that's the run, and that's the run along the sea. There's one portion where you break out from the mountains and you come down to the sea, and that's where it is. I'm already missing the place with this photograph
What
you've
a
shown me.
beautiful place for running a, I would say, marathon or a run. It's so nice. Can we have the next picture?
I put
This,
this up on my Instagram feed. I think that's where you might have got it
yes,
from.
yes.
So my father and I were very, very close. We had two children. My sister is 4 years older than I am, although she looks 4 years younger. And she and I were raised by my father. My mom died when I was 20. So she did raise us, of course, but uh, mom was half Punjabi, half Maharashtrian, and Baba was Bengali, fully Bengali. He passed away 13 years ago, and this photograph is from 2000. And he must have been, I was 33, so he must have been 63, 65 actually. And no, 2000, he was 70. 70. He died at 77 in 2007. So, in fact, today, strange that we mention it, today is his death anniversary. And I was very close to him. My father was a nurturer. He was a gentle, soft man. Uh, he never raised his voice. He cooked in the house. My mother never entered the kitchen. She was the daughter of a general. She never entered the kitchen. She worked. She was the person who we were terrified of. Um, in the days when it was not politically incorrect, she has whacked me around a few times, and I think it helped me because I was quite the brat when I was growing up. But my father was he was he was just he had a lovely sense of humor, beautifully dressed, gorgeous looking. I didn't get a single feature from him, as you can see. Uh, just a wonderful father, and I narrate this story. It's actually in Kalpurush, the film I did, where he used to take me. In Bengal, the husband goes out shopping for the house, the fish and the
Right.
meat and the gehu and the atta and the chawal and the sabzi and the uh, and the surf and the debt and the soaps and the everything, the shampoos, and then the bread and the pastries, and then all of that from start to finish. It's called bajar, and Baba used to take me to do bajar. Uh, in the markets of Grant Road and Prabhadevi, and I used to be told to hold on to his index finger, and not
Yeah,
leave that. And Alok, that finger, it felt like I was
yeah, it's the
hugging a
biggest.
tree trunk.
Yeah, it's like the biggest strength that you can draw
It
from.
felt like I was hugging a tree trunk and that nothing could harm me. It's uh, it's a great gift to receive.
Yeah, and you've given a story. I think there's a story that is mentioned about you going to watch cricket on your Instagram. Really touched by it. Can we have the next picture, please?
Oh, where did you get this from? Okay, so Kashmir. I was 4. Didi was 8 or 7.5. Didi wanted to sit on the fence alone, and being the brat that I was, I sat myself next to her, and as you can see, she wasn't happy about it. Uh, and I have spent the rest of my life making sure that I never make my sister unhappy. Uh, we are like twins, and I don't forgive the brat for doing that. Um, I, yeah, I could have done better, and since then, I hope I've done better by my sister.
The next picture, please. Oh my God. Okay.
Oh man, you guys have really gone all out.
This picture is a story I'm sure our audiences would want to know a lot
This
more
has been
than what
taken by
it
one of the
reveals.
greatest photographers in the country, uh, Prasad Nayak. He's a wonderful photographer, and I broke my nose. My last nose break was the fourth nose break, and it was about 10 years ago. And
Was this
it looked
rugby
so.
or was it?
Yeah, yeah, of course, in rugby, all my nose breaks, not all my noses, all my nose breaks have been in rugby. And this was a clean crack. Elbow went across the bridge of my nose. I heard it crack. There were rivers of blood flowing out of my nose. And when I'm really in pain, for people who know me really well, I start laughing. And I was laughing, running around the ground, looking at this blood streaming out of my head. And I called up Prasad after I had the operation, and I said, Prasad, this is a great picture. He said, what? I said, just, I'm coming to the studio. He said, makeup, hair. I said, forget about that. I'm just coming to the studio. You see, and you'll love to take this photograph. And he took this picture, and it's such a great photograph. I love it. I think it's just extraordinary. So for me to actually see this photograph takes me back a decade. But like all soldiers, you wear your injuries with like medals, like badges.
And they're like
And yeah,
medals, yes.
but Prasad did a fantastic job. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is the picture I will ever put if I ever get onto a dating app like Tinder or Bumble. That's the photograph I'm going to put up. Not that
It's
anyone's going to swipe
wonderful.
right for me, but that's fine.
No, but like you said, you carry your medals, and a sportsman. I think there's so many injuries, and rugby is such a high contact sport. It must be a really dangerous sport at times to play rugby, because you see people colliding against each other.
Yeah.
We will talk about rugby, but I think we have some more pictures of you. The next picture.
Alok, that is actually me. That was one of the most challenging things I ever did. I was working in a horror film called Fired that's gone straight to online. It didn't get a release. And it's a horror film, a proper horror film. And in one of the scenes, my head bursts. So the director was reluctant to let my real head burst because then I would not be available to do the next scene. So he thought that maybe we should make a cast of my head. So what they do is they put you in a smock, then they take cling film, the kind of stuff that you wrap fruit with and stuff, and they cling film your entire head. And they make two holes and they poke straws out of your nose so you can breathe. Then they put that blue gelatinous stuff that they put in your teeth when they're taking impressions for a cavity or for
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
you know what I mean? The dentist. That
The
pepperminty
dentist,
smelling
yes.
stuff, they put that over my entire head. Kept shoving the straws to keep the nasal passage clear. Across the
Because it
eyes.
becomes so claustrophobic, it becomes all,
Oh,
yeah.
it's like you're buried alive. And then they
Yeah.
put plaster of Paris, when you fracture yourself, and they wrap your entire neck and head in plaster of Paris, which hardens like a helmet. And then you can't even hear people. You can only breathe. And it takes hours, and it's really, really scary. I didn't think it would be that scary, but people couldn't see my terrified face because I was beneath all that stuff. But I was like this for maybe an hour, maybe more. And they kept trying to chat, and I could hear their echoes from far away as if, I was in anesthesia or something. This was a tough one. And so you can see that they've cleared the nasal passage, and you can see the blue where I was breathing from.
Must have been really tough, and especially for an hour where you can't breathe, all of it. So, talking about being sort of constrained or to a makeup, we've all been in this situation of a pandemic. Yes, it's begun to open up in the last few months, but then we are indoors most of the time. And I think yourself being a fitness person who runs, how's your fitness routine been like these last so many months? What do you do? You're a marathon runner, I know, but is there something that you would like to share with the audience?
Well, I went through 5 stages. So my first stage was uh, when we could still uh, go out in the city to shop and stuff like that. So I used to walk everywhere to shop. Uh, that stopped. You could not do that anymore. You couldn't travel outside your containment zone. And so then I began to climb the stairs of my building. I could not even exit my building. My building is tiny, it has 5 floors. So I used to climb, it has 6 floors, including the terrace. So I used to climb up 6 floors and climb down 6 floors 40 times. I used to do 240 floors a day. It used to take me 2, 3 hours. And that's about 2,500 feet. And so I did Everest in about 17 days. Not that that was my intention. So I was obsessive about just doing that. Then the next stage, we were allowed to go up and about, and then I began to walk the city. And I walked and jogged. Yesterday I did 21K, and I went all over. I know where the drug addicts sit beneath which flyovers in which parts of Bombay. I
Right.
know where the rich kids go out at night and try and steal a smoke from the nearby panwala and chat. I know where lovers you would not expect, and suddenly you see movement, and I know where there are people snatching a few moments of privacy,
Yeah.
in the still of night in parts of the city. I mean, I've been everywhere, and that was the next phase. And then the fields opened up, and we could play rugby again. So that's the stage I'm at. But today, and then I went through a yoga phase. My sister taught me yoga. She's been doing it for 3 years. And she taught me yoga. And then I began to go to her house. So today I've mixed them all up. One day it's a 20-kilometer run, 10-kilometer run, 10-kilometer walk. One day it's rugby. One day it's yoga. And soon, hopefully, with racket sports, I'll get back to squash. And then tennis is still on, but when the marker comes back, then I can start playing tennis. So that will be, and then swimming will be the fifth great thing
Yes,
of happiness for me.
that's so interesting because it's gotten on to so many of us, and I think staying fit in these times is extremely important. Rahul, we'll move on to a section here, what we call it as the rapid fire. It's something that we know about you. It's about making choices or just giving us an answer. So there are two rounds to this. We'll get started with round one. So since you've been a sportsman, you mentioned you've played cricket. So is it rugby or is it cricket?
To watch Test cricket, to play rugby,
Acting or directing?
directing.
A film that you wish you could have been a part of?
Gandhi,
Bengali or Hindi films?
Hindi.
And what has been your strangest fan moment?
Opened the door. There was a guy holding three plastic bags with lots of papers in them. He was sweating profusely. He was bathed in sweat. He said he had come all the way from Ahmedabad to see me, and he had been walking the streets of Bombay trying to find me. And finally, he did. He was obviously not well mentally, so I sort of calmed him down, quietened him, and then called up some people who then assisted him in terms of looking after him. And hopefully, I don't know what happened, but hopefully also gave him his mental health was obviously suffering. Uh, this is a separate thing, but anybody who thinks I'm worth following requires their mental health to be checked very, very, very soundly, because I don't know why you would think that I'm so wonderful, but that's a joke. But as far as this incident is concerned, it was very disturbing, not so much in terms of danger, but in terms of I feel bad for that gentleman. I felt for him, and I'm glad I did what I could.
Since you mentioned, I would like you to share with the audience something about your philanthropic work. You run two organizations. Tell us about them.
Okay, I'll be as brief as I can. The foundation does work that no NGO in the world till today that we know of in the last 14 years does. I'm not exaggerating. So we believe that different parts of India have different levels of development. And so the development levels in some areas are below sub-Saharan Africa, and in some they can match the best in the world. So if you are looking at developing some of the underdeveloped parts of this country, what do you have to keep in mind? I think you have to keep in mind the failures of long-term development in other underdeveloped parts of the world. Many countries in Africa are an example of um, first world countries parachuting in, deciding what to do for them, parachuting out, only to find those countries reverting to the state of social, cultural, and economic collapse that they were in. Why is that? I believe it's because the developmental models that the first world brings, and it could be anybody brings to a particular area, are not the kind of models that would have been created by people from that region themselves. So why can't we let people in underdeveloped areas of India decide the best developmental model for themselves? Well, we can't because they don't have the wisdom or the education or the experience or the exposure. So if you give them that wisdom, that education, that experience, and that exposure, then they can be the deciding factors, the arbiters of what works for them. So to that end, we pick 6 children at the age of 11 from a part of India that is striving to be more developed. And we give them the best education, the best exposure of all kinds, good, bad, and ugly, of models of development across this country, and they can read and see across the world. From the age of 11 to the age of 30, from standard 6 to standard 12, then to the best colleges available, then to universities to do your masters, then work experience, then a PhD, and finally at 30 to go back to the Andamans or to Jammu and Kashmir or to Manipur, where we have our 3 initiatives, where the kids have come from, and then at the age of 30 to go back and decide what developmental model works best for their region. Now, this is a long shot. Who's to say a child at 11 will want to go back at 30? Who's to say a child at 11 will want to stay with us after the age of 20? You know? So it's a long, idealistic shot. But as somebody from a very, very famous foundation in the world, when they heard this model, said, this is the most idealistic, foolish model I've ever heard, but it's the only model to do. To send people back to their region, armed with the wisdom and the expertise and the excellence and the pride to go back and do something for them. And in a big way, not in a small way.
Yeah.
So they will be big change makers. So our Andaman's kids go back in 5 years. Our Kashmir kids are 20, they have 10 years to go. You know, when they finish everything, when they're ready to go back, that's the foundation. And HEAL, which is help eradicate abuse through learning, is we work on child sexual abuse. We used to work a lot on survivors and counseling survivors, and we still have many survivors, about 70, 80 survivors who we keep counseling for decades now. But the real game is prevention, Alok, because the figures are so staggering. They go into the hundreds of millions of sexually abused children. I mean, the last government survey in 2007 said that 51.4% of all children have been sexually abused in this country, which is 220 million. The pandemic doesn't come anywhere close to it. So we are looking at, we've done over 600 workshops in terms of teaching adults, parents, teachers, school administrators, canteen staff, bus drivers, conductors in English, Hindi, and Marathi so far, of what child sexual abuse is and how to watch out for the signs of that. And we do a mirror image workshop with children, different workshops for different age groups, starting from grade 3 all the way up to grade 12 and college. So we've done over 600 workshops because we believe if you can prevent this, then you have a chance to win this battle, because the numbers are just too overwhelming of the people who have already been through this. So these are the two organizations that I have been helming and shepherding for the last 14 years.
Wow. So Rahul, we'll move to the second round of our rapid fire, and this is going to be a little tougher than the previous one. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So this is about words. We're going to give you a few words, and you could possibly give us a quick snippet or a quick story around this. So here goes. What's been your most gratifying moment? You spoke about philanthropy, but I would still want to know what's your most gratifying moment altogether.
I would say in rugby, playing for India, the first test match, 1998, the first of 17 test matches in an 11-year career. Playing for India was to watch. Look, I'm not one of those jingoistic, rabid nationalists, but, it's the anthem, it's the India crest, it's playing with the boys that you've grown up with, and it's crossing that white line onto the field and representing your country. In cinema, it would definitely be Purna as a director. As an actor, there are many instances, so I won't. answer that. Most recently, Bulbul was very gratifying, and in the work in the field of social work and all of that, I think it's a continuing. I mean, the work that we do continues.
It's a journey per se.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, One time when you've been completely out of your comfort zone.
Uh, Playing Snehamoy in The Japanese Wife. I think that was nothing like what I am. A village school teacher from the Sundarbans speaking in village Bengali and speaking in broken English. It was crazy. It was every part of it was challenging. Cycling with a chhatri in your hand, and just as if you do this, like breathing. All of it was very challenging. The other out of the comfort zone was dancing for Dil Dhadakne Do, because I can't dance. And so they had to change everything around for me to do that whistling part because I couldn't do the other stuff. Um, During rehearsals, everybody used to stop and just watch me because uh, the choreographer would see his entire career flashing before his eyes because he knew he would never get work after he finished with me. So that was completely out of my comfort zone. Yeah, these would be the two instances I can think of.
But that's such a big hit song, and I think your
It's a great
performance
song,
and the
despite me.
whistling part. No, no, but that stands out. I think it's such an entertaining song today. I can say that. So while
Oh
we're
God.
talking about songs and choreographers, what's been your best experience filming? Something that you've really enjoyed, a movie or a scene?
Bulbul. It would be Bulbul. The director was amazing. Her sense of aesthetics, her sense of ethics, her keenness, her psychological understanding of the piece, of actors, Anvita Dutt. The producers, Karnesh and Anushka Sharma, their compassion, their generosity, their warmth, their groundedness, uh, their passion for the project, the other actors. I mean, it was just a wonderful, wonderful all-round experience. I it is the best all-round cinematic experience of my life, including the end product. If it was a great experience but not a great movie, then I would have balked at giving it this accolade. But for me, it is the number one.
Last but not the least, something you feel could have been done better, whether it was movies or maybe a rugby game or anything that you think could have been done better.
Everything, Alok. Nothing is ever perfect. The CGI, the CG work in Purna on some of the snowflakes could be done better. The graveyard scene that I acted in Bombay Boys could have been done better. Um, you know, I can think of so many things, but you can only do your best at that point of time. I will be running now for about 20 kilometers thinking about this chat, and I would say I could have done this better. You know, I could have answered this question better. There's always that. But as long as you know at that point of time that something is happening to you, you are present, you with all your integrity and all your energy and all your passion at that moment, what more can you ask for? Alok? Otherwise, there's always space for more, always space to do better.
You've been, and this we're coming towards the end of our section. You've been with rugby for like 35 years. You've played the game. You represented the country. I think the game in India is, in a lot of ways, the most well-known face of the game in India as well. Where do you see rugby, and what is the future of rugby in India? Where do you see it going?
So rugby is played in almost 250 districts across this country, which is one third of India plays rugby. But nobody knows because we're not on mass media. We're not on television. There's no great digital property happening. So till we get onto mass media, nobody will know that this sport is so popular. Uh, I have no doubt once it does get onto mass media, it will be a raging hit. It's kabaddi on steroids. It's just you're
Yeah, yeah.
sprinting, you're running, you're leaping, you're jump. And I love to watch kabaddi. So I would imagine that enjoyment would be doubled if you watched rugby. It also has a ball. It has skills. It's so that's one part of it. The second part of it is that what nobody knows is that the days of the Rahul Boses of the world playing rugby are over. This is a sport that has caught fire amongst the grassroots in this country. So we have tribals from Jharkhand, from Odisha, from Chhattisgarh representing the country. We have the sons and daughters of farmers from farming families in and around Delhi, in Haryana, representing the country. It's astonishing how many we have girls and boys who are children of disenfranchised and also right now laborers in the tea gardens in the eastern parts of India. They are playing rugby for their state in the country. So whether it's Nanded, whether it's Kolhapur, whether it's Pondicherry, wherever you go, this sport has caught fire at the grassroots. And it is and I've said this before, my sworn duty, forget about my choice, to make this sport live up to the hopes and dreams of all its athletes who take part in it, both in terms of professionalizing the sport and in terms of exciting this country and hopefully the world with how fantastic the sport is on mass media. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I will do it till my last breath. There's no question about it. I owe this sport so much because it has taught me more than even what my parents have taught me, Alok. That's how much I owe this sport. So I don't do it for personal recognition. I don't need to do this. I could do 3 interviews on a film portal and get more recognition. But it is what my heart desires. And as I said, from the age of 6 to the age of 53 today, I have always followed the dictates of my heart.
Rahul, looking at your life and career, how diverse it has been from sports to theatre to films, your philanthropy, and how much you've achieved in that diversity. I think there's one thing in common with HSBC India. It's the concept of beyond boundaries. In 2020,
Yes.
HSBC's new direction, which is India, is beyond boundaries. It talks about breaking stereotypes. Uh, and your life and journey is a true testament to this thought. We
I
salute
mean,
you.
one of the reasons why I said yes to this talk also is the fact that enshrined in HSBCs, and of course, HSBC sponsors a lot of World Rugby. I know that, but outside of that, is enshrined in the philosophy of the bank and of the group is about diversity, about breaking boundaries, and of course, the public doesn't know how much HSBC does in this, and I'd be happy to disseminate that information in any which way I can, especially today in today's world where we all have to move together or we can't move at all with this pandemic. Any one person can pull us all the way back to March 23rd, 2020. So we need to, all of us, move ahead. And you can only do that by acknowledging the diversity, acknowledging that boundaries need to be broken so that you can all get together, put your arms across each other, figuratively right now, and move out of this together.
Thank you so much, Rahul, for your time. It was so good listening to you. I'm sure our viewers would have really enjoyed your talk and really appreciate your candor so much. Thanks again. Thank you, our viewers, for all your questions and love. I would request you to do tune in to the next edition of Starstruck every alternate Friday at 5 p.m. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Alok. Thank you for all your wonderful questions. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.